Hello everyone, my name is Nora. I'm here in the Training and Education Department at EZLynx, and I'll be hosting the EZLynx Rating Engine 101 today. This webinar is intended for new EZLynx rating users. So we'll be going over the basics of setting up a new EZLynx user account, which includes setting carrier logins and carrier defaults, running your first auto quote, and just some general navigation within EZLynx, how to find applicants, how to find the quotes that you've run in the past, and things like that. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Here we are on the home page, also called the dashboard. This is the page you come to when you very first log into EZLynx. In order to navigate within EZLynx, you'll be using this black navigation pane here on the left side of the page. And you can see there's lots of different icons. So if you hover over an icon, you can see how a flyout comes out, and then these are the different pages that you can go to within that icon's menu. When you're brand new to EZLynx, there's a couple of steps that you need to take before you start quoting. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do now. Come here to the gear icon, and this is going to list all of your settings. Come all the way to the top, and we'll be setting our carrier logins and carrier defaults. So let's go ahead and start with carrier logins. This page is going to list all of the carriers that you're set up for EZLynx quoting. Notice here on the upper left-hand side, I have a grid that says independent accounts. These are all of the carriers that you're appointed directly with. You have your own username and password, and you have your own agent code. Now, some of you, if you're new to being an independent agent and maybe you signed up with a brokerage or something like that, you may have a second grid down here on the bottom, and it's going to say shared accounts. So those are all of the carriers that you are not appointed directly with and you are sharing credentials with someone else. If you do have that shared accounts grid, you won't need to follow these instructions that I'm about to show you because someone else has already gone and set those up for you. So you only need to worry about independent accounts. And what we're going to do is we're going to set the username and password that you use to log directly onto the carrier site. When you first come to this page, you're going to have all red X's. I've gone ahead and already set some of mine, and that's why I have the green check marks. Let's just come here to one of our carriers, go to the far right, and click the Add Set. The first thing you're going to see is this state drop-down box, and if you're like me, I'm very detailed, and so it's going to be tempting to go ahead and set your login for each of your rating states. However, that is not necessary, and really it's just going to cause you more trouble down the road. It's going to take more time. So please leave this set to default, and it's going to cover you for all of your rating states. Then go ahead and enter the username and password that you use to log directly onto the carrier site, and then click this green Save and Test button. Now you're going to see it kind of spins around. It tells you that it's validating, and what we're doing is we're going out to the carrier site and we're attempting to log in on your behalf, and so we're going to check and make sure that those logins are working. The validation succeeded, and so it changes that red X that you used to have into a green check mark. Once you have the green check mark, then you can go ahead and start rating with that carrier. If for some reason the validation fails, what I suggest you do is go directly to the carrier site and attempt to log in there. What you'll need to do is actually enter your password. Don't let it pre-fill because it could be something different than what you think it is. And you just need to take whatever necessary steps you need to take in order to get that login working on the carrier site, whether it be use forgot my password or contact their support team or whatever it is. But once you're able to log directly on the carrier site, you will be able to set those credentials here in EZLynx. Some of the carriers do ask you to update your password every so often. I think Travelers is like 90 days. So anytime you do update a password on a carrier site, you need to come back into EZLynx to this page and go ahead and update it here. It doesn't happen automatically, and we do need to have your login set in order to log into the carrier site on your behalf and get a quote. So it's very important that you have all of your usernames and passwords here on this page all current and up to date. So that's about all there is to setting your carrier logins. It's all pretty basic. Now we'll move on to the next step. Go back to the gear icon, and this time we'll go to carrier defaults. Carrier defaults are all of the underwriting questions that your carriers are going to allow you to set answers to, and those answers will pre-fill into all of your new applications. So it's a great time-saving tool. First thing you want to do is come to the line of business drop-down, and we'll start with auto. Select a rating state. I'll select Texas since we're in the great state of Texas here. Give it a moment and it'll populate the page with all of the underwriting questions for all of the carriers that you have for this line of business in this rating state. Right now we're going to focus on this middle column. It's called Your Defaults. And so when you set your defaults, it's only going to set it for your username and password that you use to log into EZLynx. So if there are 5 agents in your office, it's not going to set it for anyone else. It's just going to set it for you. If you look over here on the right, we do have another column. It's called Agency Defaults, and those are actually defaults that are set for everyone in your office. We do have a way of giving someone in your office the capability to set the defaults for everyone. So if someone in your office would like to have that capability, they can just contact our support team, and it's a really quick setup, and it's going to be the same instructions that I'm about to show you. The only difference would be that instead of coming here to the gear icon, instead, they would be going to the admin page. So if you're setting the agency defaults, set those from the admin page, and if you'd like to set your own defaults, you'll set it from the settings page. So that's what we're going to do now. In order to open up the field so that you can set answers, you need to come over here to the right and click the Modify Defaults button. And then it opens up these fields. As you can see, the very first question here under MetLife, it's talking about setting your MetLife agent code. I can't stress enough how important it is to run your quotes in EZLynx with the correct agent code. Because if you run it with the wrong code, you'll still get a successful quote in EZLynx, but you'll never be able to find that quote on the carrier site. And that's because the agent code is what tells the systems where to put it on the carrier site. So very, very important that you set at least your agent codes and producer codes here in your carrier defaults, because there's no real standard amongst the different carriers. They're all a different length. There's no format. So it can be a little tricky. They're hard to remember. And so rather than when you're completing a new application, having to dig around on your desk to find that agent code for MetLife, or maybe trying to remember it from memory and accidentally getting it wrong, if you go ahead and set them here, then it'll automatically pre-fill into all of your new applications, and you'll know that that code is always correct. So I highly recommend, if nothing else, that you at least set your producer codes here in your carrier defaults. Here you can see it's asking for the MetLife agent code, and we do give you a little hint. It says it's 7 characters. If you look over on the right hand side of the field, it even shows you what the format is. It's 1 number followed by 2 letters and then 4 more numbers. So if you're not quite sure what the agent code is, you can often take a look at that and it'll give you some guidance. Now, you'll notice the very next question for MetLife is talking about MetLife credit scoring. And I can guarantee you that 99.9% of the time, you are going to select Order Credit Report. So if you go ahead and select that answer here, then that answer is going to automatically fill into all of your new applications. So you can see how that's going to be a great time saver for you. You're not going to have to take the extra time to go ahead and make a selection that you make on every single application. And let me just go ahead and say that if you answer a question the same way, let's say 80% of the time, go ahead and set that answer here in your defaults, and the other 20% of the time you can make a change while you're in the application. It's not going to be set in stone, but at least the majority of the time the system is going to pre-fill the correct answer for you. Here's another one. It's talking about applying an advance quote discount. That's probably a no-brainer. You're probably always going to say yes to that. So go ahead and set that to yes. Just go through all of the questions one by one, answer as many as you can. You can certainly set as many or as few of these as you'd like, but the more of them you set, the faster your quoting is going to go. I'd like to also point out that as you're going through these questions, it is a good idea to keep your eye here on the agency defaults column. Because sometimes there may be someone in your office who's an admin, or maybe someone at a main office if you're at a branch, who has gone ahead and set some of these agency defaults. If their agency defaults set, the system is automatically going to pull those because it's set for everyone in your office. So if the code is correct, or the answer is correct here in the agency defaults column, great. You don't need to set your own because the system is going to go ahead and pull that information. However, if for some reason the answer here in agency defaults is not what you want to use on your applications, then it'll be extra important that you go ahead and set your own here under your defaults. Because anytime you have your default set, it's going to override the agency defaults. So let me say that again because it's a little complicated, but anytime you set your own defaults, it's going to override anything that's set in the agency defaults. Once you're finished going through the page and setting as many of these as you'd like, be sure to click Save Changes. I've had agents call in the past and they spent a lot of time setting the defaults, but they forgot to click Save Changes. So that's a very important step. What you'll need to do is come up here to the line of business and set the defaults for both auto and home in each of your rating states. So I would go ahead and set auto and home in Texas, and then let's say I have a second rating state, maybe Oklahoma. I would go in and set auto and home in Oklahoma. So I'm actually setting them 4 separate times. And that's because there are different underwriting questions based on the line of business and the rating state. So I know that maybe that sounds like a lot of work, but honestly, you get it done up front like this and it's going to save you a lot of time. That way you're not having to answer all these questions on every single new application that you create. And I can tell you that the home application does have a lot of underwriting questions. So please set them here. It's going to save you a lot of time. All right, that's about it for setting carrier defaults. Once you have your new EZLynx user account set up because you've set your carrier logins and you've set your carrier defaults, now you're ready to go ahead and start quoting. To do that, you'll come here to this folder icon. It has a person on it, and that's our applicants menu. Then click on Create New Applicant. Now that we're about to create a new applicant in EZLynx, I do like to take a moment and just let you know that there's several different ways that you can get your applicant data into EZLynx without having to enter it manually. The first, and of course my favorite, is that you have the EZLynx management system. If you're coming over from another management system to EZLynx, you can use our data conversion service to transfer all of that information from your prior system into EZLynx. If you're new to management systems, you can still have all of your carriers just go ahead and download your entire book of business into EZLynx. If you don't have the EZLynx management system, but you have some other management system, we are compatible with a lot of other management systems as far as importing the data from that system into EZLynx. And what we use to do that is called the EZUpload client. The EZUpload client is just a quick download onto your system, and it shows up on your computer as a printer. So once you have it downloaded, you would simply pull up an Accord form in your management system, click Print, choose the EZUpload client as the printer, and then that information is going to transfer right on into EZLynx, so you're not having to do all that typing. Another way is if you're using a lead generator. We're compatible with a lot of lead generators out there. So what you would want to do is you would contact our support team. We just do a very quick setup on our side. It's basically just checking a box. Then you would contact your lead generator, give them your EZLynx username. They do a quick setup on their side. And once both of those setups are done, then they can start sending your leads right on into EZLynx. Usually I think what happens is the lead generator sends you an email or a text or something like that notifying you that you have a new lead that they've sent to EZLynx. And then all you would have to do is come up here to this box that's available on most EZLynx screens here at the upper left, and you would just type in the applicant name and you'd be able to go ahead and find that one that they sent in. It may not contain all of the information in the application, but it's going to contain everything that the lead generator obtained. So at least you're not having to do as much typing. If you're not going to use any of those methods, then you will be entering your applicant into EZLynx manually, and that's what I'm going to show you now. Here in EZLynx, one of the things you'll notice is that anything red indicates a mandatory field. Here you'll see that we have some red asterisks. Sometimes you'll see that the actual field is shaded red, and sometimes you'll see red arrows. But anytime you see red, you'll just know that those are mandatory fields. Lead source is not a mandatory field, it's optional. However, if you were to go ahead and select an answer every time you create a new applicant, then you'll be able to run reports based on that field in the future. And let me just go ahead and say that this drop-down box is completely customizable. Whoever in your office has the feature that we call self-admin, they have access on their settings tab to customize this drop-down box. So if you don't use any of the selections that we automatically have in that box, you can hide them. And if there are other selections that you'd like to add, then you can go ahead and add those. So like I said, it's customizable. Here I'd like to point out that we have our quote templates feature. Now, I'm not going to go into all the nitty-gritty details of how to create quote templates right now. I just want to make you aware that it is a great time-saving feature, and that if you decide to use it, this is where you'll use it. Every time you create a new applicant, you'll see quote template, and you can make a selection here. Quote templates is very similar to our carrier defaults. Carrier defaults cover all the underwriting questions that the carriers ask, but quote templates cover everything else in the application. So what you can do is select answers to the fields in the application, and then every time you use that quote template, when you're on this page, then all of those fields are going to automatically fill in with the answers that you have in the template. So you can see how that would be a great time saver. And a lot of agents create these based on the coverages, because there's a lot of fields that you have to answer questions to on the coverage tab, and a lot of times you answer those the same way based on what type of risk you're quoting. So you can create as many of these quote templates as you'd like, and you can give them different names. One person in the office can create a quote template and then share it with everyone else in the office, so that saves time because only one person has to create these. And I highly recommend that you do use those. They're a great time-saving feature. Now, I've already created an applicant. I have an applicant in the system that I use for my demos, so I didn't go ahead and fill all this out. But once you do fill this out, you would simply click on this Create New Applicant button, and then I'm going to show you the page that you'll land on as soon as you click on this button. This is the page that you land on. It's called the Details tab. And let me just tell you really quickly, now that we've created this new applicant, everything you see here on this page is all related to this one applicant, and we call it the applicant account. So everything here in the left sidebar is all related to this one applicant. You can collapse and expand that information, whether you'd like to have it showing all the time or not. And then all of these tabs are also related to this one applicant. You've got all the quotes that you've run for this applicant, you've got the documents for this one applicant, and you've got activities. So there's a lot of information related to this one applicant. We are on the Details tab. This houses all of the basic information about your customer, his name, date of birth, marital status, address, things like that. So it's all the basic information that's shared between the different applications that you'll submit to the carriers from within EZLynx. So you're only having to enter this information once, and it's shared between the different applications. I know everyone is very familiar with how to fill out an application, so I am not going to go over the entire application with you. What I'm going to do is point out the fields that are important for EZLynx rating and give you some tips. First thing I want to point out is the Social Security number field. This is an optional field in EZLynx. We know that a lot of consumers these days are very concerned about giving you their social. They're worried about identity theft. They're worried about their credit. So it is not a mandatory field in EZLynx. A lot of agents get confused because when they get to the Finish tab, they get a little warning that says you didn't enter the social. But it's just a warning. It's just letting you know that you didn't put it in, so in case you want to go back and put it in, you can. However, it's not going to stop you from submitting the quote. There are some carriers and some rating states that do require the social, so it's going to be up to you whether you enter that or not. Next, I want to talk about these co-applicant fields for a moment. As you can see, my applicant is married, and so that's why these fields were opened up so I could enter the spouse down here below. If my applicant is single, then you don't have the area to enter the co-applicant information. But if for some reason, let's say you wanted to enter a child or a parent, then you could just check this box and that'll also open up these fields. Next, let's take a look at the address. Once you enter the address, you do need to click the Validate button, and the address validates through the U.S. Postal Service, so we really don't have any control over whether it's successful or not. But as long as you know it's a good address, then you can just move forward. It's not going to stop you from quoting. It's very similar to the social because at the end on the Finish tab, you'll probably get a little warning that says the address didn't validate, but it's not going to stop you from submitting your quote. Once you've completed everything on this page, you have the option to save and go to the auto application or save and go to the home application. You can do your quotes any way you want. You can do the home by itself, you can do the auto by itself, you can complete the home application first and then the auto and submit them together. So really, it doesn't matter to us what you want to do, but this is where you'll have the option to decide where you want to go from here. So we're going to go ahead and save and go to auto. Now you'll notice that you have a whole new set of tabs, and these are all related to the auto application. So you still have your applicant account tabs here at the top, which you can access at any time, but you also have your application tabs. So we're going to go through the application now. Here we're on the rating tabs, the first tab in the auto application, and the only thing that I really want to point out here is this description field. If you think that you're going to run your quote more than one time, I highly recommend that you use the description field. Put some sort of information in here that's going to help you distinguish that quote from another quote that you run. I'm going to show you in a few minutes where the description shows up, but I want you to be aware that this is where you will enter it, here on this first tab, the rating tab, in both the auto and the home applications. Okay, let's go on to the policy info tab. Here we have a credit check authorized field. We don't run the credit here at EZLynx, but when you select yes, you're authorizing each of the carriers to run a credit check if they choose to do so. Some carriers may not require a credit check to provide a quote, and some do. But I would highly recommend that you select yes here, or the majority of your quotes will probably fail. I also want to point out that this is a good field to use in your quote templates, because you're probably always going to select yes. And so if you put that answer in a quote template, then it'll automatically be selected for you, and you won't have to make that selection each time you create a new applicant. Here I'd like to point out this package field. This is referring to an auto and home package discount. It's not referring to a multi-policy discount, so if you're trying to get a discount for motorcycle, boat, life, something like that, that's a multi-policy discount, and I'm going to show you that in just a couple of minutes. This right here is just referring to an auto and home package discount. If you want that discount, select yes in both the auto and the home applications. Okay, let's move on to the driver info tab. You'll notice that your applicant and your co-applicant are already entered on this page for you. Some of the fields are grayed out, and if you want to make some sort of a change to any of this information, like let's say you accidentally entered the birth date in wrong, or you've decided that now you want to enter the social security number, you can't do it from this page. I've had agents call and they're frustrated because they're trying to make a change here and they can't. But this is all of that basic information that's back on the details tab. So if you need to make a change to anything that's grayed out here, just go back to the Details tab, make the change there, and then go back into your auto application. If you'd like to add additional drivers, simply come up here to this little link that says Add Driver, and when you click it, each time it'll add a new driver for you. If you want to delete them, just click the red X and say OK. Now this green button, this is our driver prefill. We offer both a driver and vehicle prefill, so you'll see this green button on both of those tabs. And it's a completely optional feature. Depending on the contract that you have with EZLynx, you may have a certain number of complimentary lookups each month, and those are shared with everyone in your office. So that's what this yellow box is referring to. It kind of counts those down for you. Each time someone in your office uses one of those lookups, it counts it down, and that way you know how many are remaining in the month that you're in. If you'd like to use this feature after your complimentary lookups have been used, you can do that. You just need to set up a credit card. There's a small fee associated with it, and that way you could continue to use it once your complimentary lookups have been used for the month. If you don't have the green button and you'd like to get this feature, just simply contact our support team. They can give you all the details and get you all set up. Down here at the bottom of the driver info tab, I just want to point out there are some discounts here that you may want to apply to your drivers, such as good student, driver education, good driver, and mature driver. Okay, let's move on to the vehicles tab. Again, you'll notice that there is the green button here. This is the vehicle prefill. So what happens is when you click on that button, it's going to pull all of the vehicles that are registered to the address that you have back on the Details tab. When you're using this feature, you need to be a little bit careful. We all register our vehicles once a year, and so if your applicant has only been at their current address a couple of months, then you could potentially be pulling vehicles that are registered to the prior resident at that address. So you probably just want to use this if you know that your applicant has been at their address for at least a year. Again, this is a completely optional feature, so it's up to you whether you want to use it or not. Certainly, there are a couple of other ways that you can enter your vehicle information. Here on the left, you can just come up, click on the drop-down box, and add as many vehicles as you'd like. We have up to 6 because of the fact that you can bind 6 vehicles on a policy. However, most carriers do not provide a quote through a rater, and that's true of any rater, not just EZLynx, for more than 4 vehicles. And I'm not quite sure why that is. Like I said, you can bind up to 6 vehicles on a policy, but for some reason the carriers don't like to provide a quote through a rater for more than 4 vehicles. So, I have a little workaround for you. If you have 5 or 6 vehicles, what we recommend that you do is go ahead and enter 4 of the vehicles here into EZLynx, run your quote, get your most competitive rate, and then you can go on over to the carrier site and add that 5th and or 6th vehicle directly on the carrier site before you bind the policy. You'll also notice we have a little message that talks about not being able to quote vehicles prior to 1981, and that's because the VIN format changed at that time and we just don't support that older VIN format. Very similar to the other workaround, what you can do, if you have an older vehicle, you can simply enter the other vehicles that you have here in EZLynx, get your most competitive rate, and then you can go ahead and add that older vehicle on the carrier site before you bind the policy. Or what you could do is go ahead and enter that older vehicle into EZLynx but list it as a 1981 vehicle, get your most competitive rate, and then update to the correct year for the vehicle on the carrier site before you bind the policy. Back to adding vehicles on this page. If your applicant has shared the actual VIN number with you, check this box that says Select Using VIN, enter that big long crazy number in, and click the Lookup button. The system will automatically fill out the rest of these fields based on the VIN number. Or, if your applicant has not shared the VIN number with you, then just leave this box unchecked and you can select the year, make, and model. And the system will generate a generic VIN number that you can run the quote with, as you can see here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and delete these. I only want 2 vehicles on my application right now. And we'll move on to the Vehicle Use tab. There's not much to it. The only thing I want to point out is there's a checkbox if you need to enter an alternate garage location. Same idea, once you enter the address, you do need to validate it with this button. However, if it doesn't validate for some reason, it's not going to stop you from getting a quote. Now we'll go to the Incidents tab. This is where you'll enter any accidents, violations, or comp losses that your applicant has shared with you. I do want to stress that EZLynx does not run any type of MVR or clue report. We don't authorize the carriers to do that, and that's because these days most carriers do charge a fee for those reports, so you can imagine if you were running those on every quote, every carrier, and if it's an auto quote, it's usually per driver, so every driver, that could get pretty pricey. So that's why we don't do it, and I think that most consumers these days are pretty savvy. They know that if they don't provide that type of information to you, that they're not going to get an accurate quote. So once you run your quote in EZLynx and you go on over to the carrier site and you're preparing to bind, the carrier is going to have you run those reports at that time. If for some reason you find some additional information, then you can go ahead and bring it back to this tab in EZLynx, enter it, resubmit your quote, and then just see if any of the carriers become more competitive now that you have this additional information. Okay, the Coverage tab. As you can see, there are a lot of fields here, so that's why that quote template can make your quoting go a lot faster. If you create a quote template with all of these coverage fields already pre-filled, then you won't have to make all these selections on this page. You might have to just make little tweaks here and there, but for the most part it's going to be ready for you. Under the credit section, this is where you can apply that multi-policy discount that I was talking about earlier. You also see that there's a AAA discount here. Sometimes you'll see an AARP. So here in the credit section is where you can apply those types of discounts. Now we'll go to the Assignments tab. It'll list all of your vehicles across the top, all of your drivers along the side. The carriers just want to know what percentage of the time each of the drivers drives each of the vehicles, and it needs to total 100% up and down. Now you always have to have a primary driver on a vehicle, so if you only have 2 drivers, you can't just put 50-50, you have to at least put 51 and 49, and then that would be fine. Now to the Carriers tab. This page is the one that has all of the questions that you answered in your carrier defaults. So most of these should be ready for you if you've set your carrier defaults. While you're here, please go ahead and check that your agent code is correct. You might as well check it while you're here, because if you run your quote with the wrong code, you will get a successful quote in EZLynx. However, you'll never be able to find that quote on the carrier site. So if you ever can't find your quote on the carrier site, come back to the Carriers tab on your applicant, check the code, update it, resubmit the quote, and then you'll be able to find the quote on the carrier site. Now I'm going to leave one of these not set, and I know there's a red arrow there, but I just want to show you what happens on the Finish tab when you've missed something within the application. So let's go to the Finish tab, and you'll see here at the top is I have a red error. Errors must be fixed before I can submit my quote, because as you can see right here, I'm trying to click on the button, but it's grayed out and it won't let me submit. So it gives you a little idea of what the error is, and you can just click on the little fix link. It'll take you to the page where you need to make the correction. Look for the red arrow, go ahead and fix it, and then just go back to the Finish tab. Now you can see my red error is gone. I do have this information here in yellow. We call these warnings, and it is talking about the fact that the Social Security number is empty and that my address has not validated. However, it's just kind of a red flag letting you know you didn't enter the social, or whatever it is. That way, if you'd like to make some changes to whatever it is, you can. Otherwise, the Submit to Carriers button is highlighted and you can go ahead and submit to carriers. When you're on the Finish tab, you do have the option to go ahead and complete the other application. In my case, I would save and go to Home, or you can go ahead and submit to carriers. I've already completed my home application, so we're going to go ahead and submit to carriers. Now we come to the Quote Scenarios page. This is unique to EZLynx, and what it allows you to do is get up to 3 additional premiums from each of your carriers based on some different coverages that you have listed below. You'll notice the very first column is the agent input column. That's all the information that you just entered in your application, and you will always get that quote. However, you do have these checkboxes for 3 additional premiums that you'll receive from each of your carriers. What you would need to do is the first time you come to this page, you would go ahead and set the different coverages that you're interested in, and a lot of agents use this for upselling. Go ahead and go through all of these. I know that there's quite a bit of information here, so it may take you a few minutes. But once you've set these the first time, the system is going to remember these and use them on every future quote that you run. So you only have to take the time to do it once. After that, all you would have to do is check these boxes at the top, and you can check any of them. And you'll notice that you have 3 options for auto at the top, 3 options for home at the bottom. This page is completely optional, so you can do whatever you'd like. Once you're finished, click the Continue button. This is the very last page you come to right before you submit your quotes to the carrier. This page allows you to make some last-minute decisions about which carriers you want to submit to and which lines of business. This page comes in handy if maybe you've gone ahead and ran a quote, one of the carriers came back with an error message, maybe they're having some sort of temporary technical problems on the carrier site, and so you wait a little bit and then you want to resubmit. When you resubmit, you can uncheck all of the carriers that gave you a successful quote and just submit to the carrier that gave you the error message. And that way you won't get a lot of quotes stacked up on the carrier sites. But we're going to go ahead and submit to all of the carriers. So now the quote is running, and as you can see, the bars kind of scroll across the page and let you know what percentage each quote is at. As the quotes start to come back, your page will jump around a little bit, and that's because we're reordering the quotes based on most competitive at the top, least competitive at the bottom. And at this point, what we're doing is we're logging directly onto the carrier sites on your behalf, obtaining the quote, and we're just displaying the results here in EZLynx. I know a lot of times agents get a little bit confused because they think that there's some sort of bridging that's required after the quote comes back in EZLynx, but that's not the case. There's no bridging required in EZLynx. I know that there's some other raters out there that once you get the quote back in their system that you do have to bridge it over to the carrier site somehow. But like I said, that's not the case in EZLynx. The quotes are already waiting for you on the carrier site. Now, as you can see, once the quote comes back, there is this green button here on the right-hand side. It's called the Easy Login button. And what that is it's a convenience. It takes you to the carrier site, it logs you in, and it takes you directly to the quote on the carrier site. But it's just for convenience. If you wanted to, you could log directly onto the different carrier sites and access your quotes there. Next, I want to point out here in the center, you'll see that this is the agent input column. That goes back to the quote scenarios page that I was showing you. Agent input is the information that you put in the application, and you will always get that quote. But here, off on the right-hand side, is where you'll see any options that you selected back on the quote scenarios page. So I selected option 1, and you can see that it's showing me a premium for each of the options that I selected on the quote scenarios page. As I explained before, I went ahead and set some different coverages, and those are outlined up here. If I hover over this blue icon, it's going to show me the different coverages that I set for that scenario. And here's the premium that I received for that scenario, and it also calculates the difference between what I have here in the agent input column and what I have here for the different coverages. So you can quickly explain to your prospects the different coverage that they would receive for the difference in the price. So this is a great upselling tool, as I was explaining to you before. It does have a message here that says that this additional premium may not have been saved on the carrier site. It just depends. We have certain carriers that do support that feature of saving it onto the carrier site, and then we have others that don't. If you go to the carrier site, let's say you did want to go ahead and bind this different set of coverages, your customer decided that they like that, and you find that it's not saved on the carrier site. What you can do is come back here to this page, to the quote, and click on this red star icon. When you click on that, it's going to take you back to the Coverages tab in the application, but it's going to update all the coverages to the ones that you have here in this option. Then you can simply go back to the Finish tab, resubmit the quote. Once you resubmit, now you're going to have that quote on the carrier site, and then you'll be able to go ahead and bind. And that makes it so that you don't have to spend a lot of time on the carrier site making the changes to those coverages and re-quoting directly on the carrier site. So this makes it a lot faster. Now let's step back again to a quote that's running. As your quote is running, please pay attention to the top of the page. If you see a yellow bar like this and it has a link, in this case it's MetLife, the carrier is asking for some additional underwriting questions to be answered. If you see this, you do need to click on the link and answer the underwriting questions within 5 minutes, or your quote for that carrier is going to error out. You'll just get an error, you won't get a quote. When you see this message, simply click on the link, answer the questions, and then your quote will continue running and you'll get your premium. Okay, another thing I'd like to point out on your quote is that some people do have their quotes set to summary view. You see here in the upper left it says summary view, and when you have it set to summary view, there's not a lot of information. You can see all there is the carrier name, the number of months in the policy term, and then the premium. So I think it's a lot better to keep your quote set to detail view. When you have it set to detail view, you're going to have a lot more information. You can see it shows all the discounts that were applied. You can hover here and see underwriting messages that the carriers send over. You can also see payment options. Some of the carriers do send over a quote proposal. You would click on this and it would open in your PDF software. It's a very nice quote proposal. That's why I think it's better to keep your quote set to summary view, because there's just a lot more that you'll see. I do want to mention that this is really up to the carrier's discretion what they want to display here. So as you're looking through these things, just be aware of the fact that it's all based on the carrier. If you scroll down to the very bottom of the quote, you'll see that there's a resubmit button. If one of your carriers, maybe they're having some sort of temporary technical issues on the carrier site and they error out, as you can see I did receive an error here on my MetLife home quote, then I can wait a little bit, click the resubmit button, and resubmit just to that carrier that failed. There's also a delete button, so if you run a quote several times for a certain applicant and you decide that maybe some of the quotes you don't want anymore and you want to clean it up a bit, you can use this delete button. It's only going to delete this one quote. It's not going to delete any other quotes, or it's not going to delete the applicant. If you'd like to email your quote to your customer, I'm sure it's very tempting to use this email quote button. That's what I would probably do. But when you use this button, it's going to send your customers something very similar to this summary view that I was showing you, where it just gives them the name of the carrier, the number of months in the policy term, and the premium, and that's all they get. What I recommend you use is this print view button. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it. And you'll see that you do have a couple of different options. You have a summary and a detail, so I recommend maybe that you play around with both of them, see which one you like better. And you can include those quote scenarios for the upselling like I've been showing you or not. Click continue, and it's going to open up this really nice PDF document in your PDF software. And as you can see, it does have all the agency information, it has your customer information, then you can see there's auto policy and home policy. And then it shows you the entire auto quote here at the top, and if you keep scrolling down, then it's going to show you the home quotes. And so this is the summary option. If you had selected the detailed option, it would show a separate page for each carrier, and it would show all the payment options and things like that. So just take a look, see which one you like better. Some people do have their PDF software set up so that they can email directly from here. If you don't happen to have your PDF software set up that way, then you could just go ahead and save this PDF document probably to your desktop, and then it makes it very easy for you to attach that to an email to your customer. Now I'd like to take just a few minutes and show you how to find an applicant in the system and how to find quotes that you've run in the past and just a couple other little navigation items. Okay, so let's say that you're looking for an applicant and maybe you were just working on them earlier in the day. If that's the case, then it's going to be a recent applicant. You'll come over to your applicant's icon and it brings out the menu, and you'll see here that you have a list of your most recent applicants that you've been working on. And that's going to take you into the applicant account. Not going to take you right to the quote, but it's going to take you to the applicant account, and then you can do anything you'd like from there. If you come down a little bit further, you'll see that you have your recent quotes. So that'll actually take you to a quote. This only lists about 10 of each. So let's say that you are trying to find a quote for someone that you ran maybe 2 weeks ago. If that's the case, whenever you're looking for a quote that's not going to be listed here in the recent list, what you need to do is find your applicant first. Once you find your applicant, then you can go to their quotes tab, and that's where all of their quotes will be. Let's say that you're looking for somebody that you ran 2 weeks ago. You're going to use this super search box here. It's in the upper left of most of your EZLynx screens. And it's a super search. It's going to search your applicant by last name, first name, co-applicant, phone number with no dashes, email address, city, state, zip code, just about anything you can think of. And if you have our management system, it's also going to search by policy number. Let's just say I'm looking for Joe Smith. So I'll go ahead and type in Smith. And as you can see, it's brought up the top 8. But I do have 47 Smiths in the system. So if it doesn't come up here in my top 8, I'll just go ahead and keep typing in more information. So I'll put in Joe. And so now I've narrowed my search to 4. But if I wanted to, let's just say I knew that he was in Wisconsin, I could go ahead and type in the Wisconsin, and then I only have 1 to select from. And so that's how I would go ahead and find any applicant that I've ever entered into the EZLynx system. It's as fast and easy as that. Once you locate your customer, I'm just going to stay here on Scott Parker, but once you locate your applicant, then all you need to do is go to this quotes tab, and it's going to give you a list of all the quotes you've ever run for that one applicant. The first column here, it's going to show you the date that you ran it and the time. It's going to show you which EZLynx user ran the quote, which lines of business, and then here on the right is that description field that I showed you. It's back on the policy info tab. That's the very first tab of both the auto and the home application, and that's the one that I was showing you, that if you thought you were going to run more than one quote, go ahead and put a description in there, and it's going to help you distinguish between the different quotes that you've run. So if I want to see snapshots of my quotes side by side, I can click on these little pluses. That'll show me little snapshots. If I just want to see them side by side, I can do that. But it's not going to take me into a live version of the quote where I have all my buttons, like my easy login button or my delete buttons and things like that. If I want to get into the live version of the quote, then I'm going to go ahead and click just anywhere else on this line besides the plus. So I can click here, and it takes me into my quote. If I want to see the list again, I simply click on the quotes tab again, and it takes me back to the list. So that's how I can toggle back and forth between the list and one of the quotes that I've selected. Now I'm going to show you some general navigation within your applicant account. Like I showed you earlier, everything on this page is all related to this one applicant. If I come to the Overview tab, the first thing that I'm going to see is this Risk Info for Quoting grid. Risk Info for Quoting is just a fancy way of saying quote application. So you can see I've got auto and home, and if I come over to the far right, I can click View Edit, and that takes me into the application so I can make any changes on any of these tabs that I'd like. If I'd like to go back to my applicant account, click on Overview, And now if I wanted to, I could go into the home application, come over to the right and click View Edit there. That's how you can toggle back and forth between your quoting applications and your applicant account. If you had our management system, you'll see that there's a second grid down here, and that's where all the policies would be located. Linked applicants here on the bottom. If I have maybe a brother and a sister, or personal lines and a commercial lines, and they're related, I can go ahead and link them here by coming over to this right-hand side, click Add Link. Search for the applicant that I want to link. Let's say I want to link Mary Smith. Maybe this is Scott Parker's sister. So I'll go ahead and select her. And in this note box, I could put that that is the sister. If I'd like to create a backlink so that I can toggle back and forth between both of the applicants, I'll go ahead and check that, which I recommend. And at that point, then you would put brother, because they're sister and brother, and then you would save. And now you can see here on the left-hand side under linked applicants, I've gone ahead and linked Mary Smith, and if I hover over it, it shows that that's a sister. If I click on it, now I've got the backlink back to Scott Parker, where it shows me that's the brother. So that's what this linked applicants area is. The details tab, I've already shown you that. That's all the basic information that's shared between the two applications. I've showed you the list of quotes. The lead info tab, now this is where it shows which agent is assigned to this applicant. I currently have Bob agent assigned to this. If I'd like to make a change to that, I just come down to the bottom and click Edit. Then I click on the little people icon here on the right side of the field. It brings up this other box. Then I would uncheck Bob applicant and then reassign it to whoever I'd like this to now be assigned to. So I'll go ahead and put Jane EZLynx, click Apply, and Save. This has changed the assigned to Jane EZLynx. And if you also look over here on the left-hand side, you'll also see that in this basic information about your applicant. Documents. You can add documents by coming over here to the right-hand side and uploading from your computer. So if you have maybe an appraisal or photos of a damaged vehicle or something like that, you can go ahead and upload those documents and they'll be saved here on your applicant's documents tab. Last tab I want to show you is the activity tab, and it's going to show you all of the activities that have been happening for this applicant. Most of them are probably generated by the system. And so this is going to allow you to see all of the things that have been happening on your applicant. One last thing before you head out, I would like to show you where you can access our information to contact our support team. You simply come over here to the left to the navigation bar, hover over this question mark with a circle. This is our support menu. We do have several video tutorials that you can watch. I think we have over 50 videos right now, and there's also documents on this page. We do have lots of different webinars. We have what we call a Lunch and Learn every Wednesday. It covers different features, different products within EZLynx, and those Lunch and Learns only last between 20 and 30 minutes. So you can learn a lot in just a short amount of time. Those are every Wednesday, usually at 1 o'clock Central Time. We have our carrier library. If you'd like to find out which carriers we currently offer in your rating state, you can simply go to our carrier library, put in your rating state, and it'll bring up a list of all of the different carriers that we do offer for EZLynx rating. Now, if it's on the list, we do offer it. The only thing you need to keep your eye on is there's a line of business list on the left-hand side. Some of the carriers, maybe we only offer them for home or we only offer them for auto, so just keep your eye on that left-hand column. It tells you which lines of business they are. But you can ignore everything else on the right-hand side. There's some other information on there, and as long as that carrier is on that list, we do offer them for EZLynx rating. Now, if for some reason the carrier is not on that list and it's a carrier that you would like to be able to rate with in EZLynx, we're constantly adding new carriers, so all you would have to do is just ask your carrier rep to contact us at Carrier Support, and that's how we get the ball rolling. We're constantly adding new carriers, whether it be a brand new carrier that we haven't offered previously in EZLynx, or maybe it's a carrier that we do currently offer, but we can just get it added in some additional rating states. If you'd like to contact our support team, simply come up here to the support center, scroll down to the bottom. It's going to list all of our support hours, and it has our phone number, and you can also email us from there. So our support team is always happy to help you out with any questions that you have. We're here for you if you need something. So that's about it for today. I thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend my webinar, and I hope you learned something new. I will be staying on and answering questions if anybody has any, but if you need to head out, I completely understand. Hope you have a wonderful day.